Videos from China have captured the exact moment when the devastating flash flood was triggered at the Tibet-Nepal border. An accidental capture from a drone and a farmer's video from Tibet show the massive glacier breaking off before the violent wall of mud and water wiped out a bustling border checkpoint at Gyirong port. And then further, of course, downstream in Nepal's Rasuwa and other towns and villages. Nepal is still busy counting the dead. Search is on to find missing pilgrims and workers. And Beijing is now fighting a second battle, the battle over blame. Critics ask why Nepal was not alerted by China earlier. Beijing has called the accusations about a failed warning system as fake news. So, did Chinese authorities know the danger was building? Was the disaster purely natural or worsened by border infrastructure? And why does China's own dam safety history make this even more harder to trust? Let's dive in. Fresh footage from the Chinese side shows the force of the Nepal flood disaster that has taken hundreds of lives. Mud, water, rocks, and debris surged through the Gyirong border region. Roads disappeared, buildings buried, vehicles pushed aside as if they were just toys. The flood struck the Nepal-Tibet border on August 26th. Nepal's Bhote Koshi and Trishuli river systems carried the surge downstream. The disaster destroyed settlements, roads, bridges, and hydropower infrastructure. The United States Geological Survey initially recorded what appeared to be a 4.4 magnitude earthquake. It later revised that event and identified it as a glacial collapse and landslide. Scientists said that an ice and rock avalanche likely blocked a river before releasing a sudden wall of water. And that distinction matters. The evidence does not show that a Chinese dam caused the flood. It points to a natural Himalayan disaster linked to unstable ice, rock, and steep terrain. But the questions about warning systems remain. According to the Chinese embassy in Nepal, claims that Beijing failed to warn Nepal are fake news. The embassy says that the disaster began on the Nepali side after an earthquake-like glacial collapse and that the flood affected both sides of the border. China has urged cooperation and said that accusations will not save lives. But critics are asking a direct question. If the disaster began near the border, did Chinese monitoring systems detect the collapse, the river blockage, or even the rising water level before the flood entered Nepal? This is not an unreasonable question. In a high mountain region, even a few minutes of warning can help people move away from riverbeds and riverbanks. It can save workers, tourists, pilgrims, and entire settlements. Nepali journalist Parshuram Kapele posted publicly that China had failed in its duty to provide early warning, saying Beijing had significantly undermined quote-unquote Nepal despite years of Kathmandu addressing Chinese security concerns. His argument is specific. Nepal has previously received timely Chinese warnings about upstream rainfall, so why not this time? He questioned why Nepal alone should pay the price for what he called a one-sided love towards its northern neighbor. Others are blaming China's uncontrolled infrastructural developments on Tibet's side for causing the mountain and the ice to become so fragile that it is resulting in frequent avalanches, landslides, and of course even flash floods. The Gyirong port, which went viral with its apocalyptic CCTV footage of the devastation, had witnessed a similar tragedy a year ago, although that was at a much smaller scale. China's response was swift and blunt. Beijing has publicly rejected these claims as fake news, denying it failed to alert Nepal about the flood. But that's where the story gets murkier. Chinese state agency Xinhua claimed the landslide actually began on the Nepali side around 9 a.m. before striking Tibet's Gyirong County, essentially reversing where blame for the trigger point should sit. But that directly contradicts the glacial lake drainage findings from Nepal's own regional climate monitoring body, which pointed to Tibet as the source. And now the new videos have raised further suspicion. This isn't China's first brush with disaster related information control. Historically, Chinese local officials have downplayed casualty figures during floods, only for public anger to force corrections later. This was seen in past domestic flooding incidents in provinces like Hebei. China does have a working system for warning Nepal. In June, Chinese border guards notified Nepali officials of expected heavy rainfall in Tibet, prompting district level alerts in two separate regions. So the mechanism exists. The real question is whether it functioned this time, or whether a glacial lake collapse moved too fast for any warning system to catch up. China has a history of controlling information during major disasters. Critics have pointed to the 1975 Banqiao Dam disaster, when official reporting was heavily restricted and the final death toll remained contested for decades. Banqiao was a different event. It involved extreme rainfall, dam failure, poor communications, and delayed warnings. It cannot be used as proof that China caused the Nepal flood, but it is relevant to the wider question of disaster disclosure. When governments control information, downstream communities cannot judge the risk in time. The Nepal disaster is a warning about the Himalayan future. A warming climate is making glaciers and high altitude slopes more unstable. Infrastructure is expanding into fragile valleys. Tourism, pilgrimage, roads, and hydropower projects are increasing the rate or the number of people exposed to sudden floods. China is still under scrutiny because it controls the Tibetan side of several major river systems. And when an upstream power controls data, infrastructure access, and every downstream is forced to rely on its word. And here lies the big warning for India. This is not a distant Nepal story. The same Himalayan zone feeds rivers that enter Arunachal Pradesh and Assam. The Yarlung Tsangpo becomes the Siang in India and later the Brahmaputra. India is worried about China's massive Medog hydropower project on the Yarlung Tsangpo. It is being built in a region known for earthquakes, steep valleys, landslides, and difficult geology. The Nepal flood did not involve the Medog project, but it showed what can happen when a huge volume of water, ice, rock, and mud move through a narrow Himalayan valley with almost no time for people to escape. At risk will be people in Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, and other Indian states who will find themselves standing right in the path of a fatal flow. You're watching Times Access and I'm Aditi Prasad. Click on the bell icon below to subscribe and never miss a Times Access update.